Today we are going to have some fun with Notion formulas and learn how to create progress bars. I love me a good progress bar, not only because they are fun, but they also add a visual element to your Notion workspace that, in my opinion, just can't be beat. We are going to start with some simple progress bars and work all the way up to fancier ones. And all of the formulas we create today are going to be available for free in the description box below, so you can just copy and paste them into your workspace. If you're ready to create some formulas, let's dive in. Okay, so I have a little mock page for us today that's going to show how we can make progress bars based on habits and goals. So first we're going to go ahead and start with our habits up here and make a little daily progress bar as we check off our habits for the day. Just a quick note, I am not planning to go super in depth into the why of what I am doing. I will explain it as I go, but we're not going to talk super heavily about the formulas and what they do today. We're just going to go ahead and create them. So to go ahead and get started, what we can do for our habits is we're going to open up our Notion formula editor. I'm going to start us off with the function let's. Let's allows us to define variables, and while this isn't super important for this specific formula, when we get to some of our fancier ones later, you're going to see where it comes into play. So I'm going to go ahead and type in let's here, and then I always like to comment what it is that I'm doing so I don't forget, and then if anybody else ever goes to my formulas, they know exactly what's going on too. So here I am just going to go ahead and add a comment that says that we are getting the total number of habits, and then I like to make a new line just to keep things clean. So this variable is going to be our total habits variable. And in this case, the easiest way to do this is to just count how many habits we have. So I've got 4 set up for us today, 1 for reading, journaling, vitamins, and sleeping for 8 hours. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and say that this variable is going to be 4. So next we are going to get our finished amount of habits, and I'm just going to add in a little comment so we don't forget what's going on. So I'm going to name it this variable finished habits. And this time we're actually going to pull in information about each of these checkboxes. So since we are working with numbers to get a percentage completed, we actually need to convert these checkboxes into numbers. So to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and start with our first checkbox, which is whether or not we have read for today. And then I'm going to use the function toNumber to give it a 1 or a 0 if it is true or false. So now we need to do that with each of the other 3. So I'm just going to go ahead and add, make a new line, and then do my next habit here. And then we're going to do the same thing for each habit. So once we have done each habit here, you can see we have all of these added together. And if they are true, they will return 1, and if they are false, they'll return 0. So once they're all added, we should have the number that we have completed. So the last thing we need to do now is add what we're going to display. This is just simply dividing our finished habits here by our total habits. And now you can see we have 0 because none of them are done. So the next thing that we're going to do to make sure this is working correctly is adjust our property just a little bit here. So I'm going to edit the daily progress here and come to the number format. We need to make sure this is marked as a percentage, and I want to make sure the decimal places are 0 here. If you want it to be a little bit more precise, you certainly can add more decimal places, but I am good with there being none for now. And then I also want to give this a progress bar. So now once we check our habits off, you're going to see our progress bar increase. So you might be wondering why I went through the effort of using the let's function here for our total habits instead of just typing in 4 at the bottom. And that is because when we start off our formula with this really beautiful structure here, you can apply this formula to pretty much anything you want. So for an example, I'm going to go ahead and show you how you can now make a progress bar with your tasks. So I actually am going to just go ahead and grab the formula that we created here, and I'm going to copy it, and we're going to use it as the base for our formula for this goal. So here I am in my goal now. This is where the progress bar is going to be. I have my tasks connected to my goals here. So this is my unfinished tasks and finished tasks for this specific goal. And then when I check off my tasks, I want my progress bar to update. So to do that, all I'm gonna do is pop into our Notion formula here and go ahead and paste our formula from our first progress bar into this formula editor. And it's gonna give us some errors, and that's totally okay. We're just gonna need to change a couple things around. It is not able to read these specific properties that we had from the other database, and that's totally okay. We're actually going to get rid of this portion. So basically all we're going to do now is update the variables to now make them applicable to tasks. So I'm going to go ahead and change the name of this to total tasks, just so we're not working with habits for now. And now we're ready to go ahead and edit this formula. So for our total tasks, all I'm going to do is change this from the number 4 to a more dynamic variable that looks at our relation to our goal tasks and counts how many tasks we have for the specific goal. So to do that, I am just going to go ahead and search for the goal tasks database. And then all I'm doing is adding the length function at the end, which will count how many tasks we have. Then for our finished tasks, we are going to be doing something very similarly, but this time I want to only look at tasks where the checkbox is marked finished. So I'm going to start the same way. I'm going to look for our goal tasks relation, and then I'm going to use the dot filter function to look for those specific tasks where the status is done. When you're working with relational formulas right here and you want to grab the information that is accurate to this specific goal that we're working on, you'll want to make sure to use this current item right here, and then we can add in what property we are looking for. So in this case, I'm looking for the done status, and I want it to be equal to done. And then just like I did above, I'm going to use our length function to get the number that we have done. So far this is looking good. We have a percentage showing here. If you don't have a percentage, double check that you have this set to the number format to be a percent again. And in this case, I chose a ring for this guy. So now if we come down to our tasks and we mark some of these complete, we'll be able to see the progress increase with checking off those tasks. Now you might be wondering, can't you do this with a roll-up? Yes, you can 100% achieve this with a roll-up. So instead of writing a formula, what you would do was add a roll-up property, and it would count all of your tasks that are marked done. But I want to show you this option because sometimes we need more complicated data than what you can actually get in a roll-up. And using your formulas like this with the relations to your databases, you can add additional filters, so you can only pull things that are assigned to certain people, for example. Or as another example, I'm going to show you what happens if we add another status if our task is archived. So for example, sometimes people like in the status here to add one for the task to be archived instead of done. So maybe this is something that you either decided that you didn't want to do, or you just have another step in your process to archive your tasks when they're finished. So if we add in an archive property here, we'll make this one red just so we can keep them apart. We now have two different properties that are considered complete in this case. Now, if you want your progress bar to include both the done and archive status, that is not something you can do with a simple roll-up, and we would need a formula to do so. So if I pop into the specific task and I change it from done to archive here, we're gonna go back into the goal, and you'll notice that the progress did decrease. Even though we have 4 completed and 2 left incomplete, now it shows that we only have 3 actually completed because it is a different status. So the easy way to fix this is to pop into our formula, and we're going to add another filter. So right here after done, we can just add another option. So I'm gonna go ahead and type in or in this case, and we're going to do the same thing. Current.done is equal to archived this time. And now you can see our progress is back to being correct because we did account for both of these statuses. So that is just a little trick if you want to work with some more complicated data. Okay, now what if we want to make our progress bars look a little bit more fun or give them a certain style? You can completely customize the way your progress bar shows in this formula property right here, But what we need to do is make this a little bit more complicated. So I'm gonna pop our formula back open and we are going to edit this part at the bottom, which is marked display. So now you are really gonna see where our variables come into play here. We are going to reference our total habits and our finished habits multiple times. So having these predefined is going to be so much easier because we don't have to type in this read to number plus journal to number plus vitamins to number every single time we need that specific number. So now that we are creating our own progress bar in this case, this is going to be a little bit fun because we have to work on the first half of our progress bar first, and then we work on the second half. So in my comments, I'm just going to go ahead and specify that we are working on the first half first. The function we are going to use for this is the substring function. This is going to divide a string, which is just a little bit of text, to show how many of our habits we have completed. To make things super easy for this, we are going to be working in the amount of 10. So we're going to use 10 characters and divide our amounts by whole numbers, which you'll see what I'm talking about in just a second. So the substring that we're going to want to divide in this case is just going to be a string of 10 x's. To get the amount of finished habits that we have, we want to split our string by the number that we have finished, which we are kind of creating based on the percentage. So we'll go ahead and start with splitting our string at 0, which just means it's going to start right here, and then it's going to count how far we are through the progress and then split it again there. Now, if we were just looking at the finished habits divided by the total habits, we're going to end up with a weird decimal number. So like if it was 2 divided by 4, that is 0.5. So instead, we want to work with whole numbers and we want to multiply this by 10, which would give us 5. And if we had some more complicated numbers, like let's say we had 3 out of 4 of our habits completed, we'd end up with something like 0.75. Multiply that by 10, we'll get 7.5. So we want to make sure that we are working with whole numbers again. So I'm actually going to round that down to the nearest whole number using the floor function. So to do that, I'm just typing in floor, and then we are adding in our finished habits divided by our total habits. Then again, we want to make sure we multiply that by 10, and then we actually have the correct number that we are looking for this specific substring. Then lastly, to make this a little bit more fun, we are going to replace all of our x's with stars, just so they look super cute. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and use the replace all function, and then use the x as the first thing we're replacing, and then add in a star, which I'm actually just going into my emojis and symbols on Mac and looking for a symbol that I like. Go ahead and grab a star there and then close that off. So now we don't have X's anymore, we have cute little stars. Now if you're feeling confused about what the heck I just did or how I even knew to do that, I've got something I think you're gonna love. On Tuesday, May 6th at 12 p.m. Central Time, I'm gonna be hosting a live masterclass all about learning Notion formulas. This isn't your typical Notion formulas class. We are not just memorizing all the formulas and how to use them. Instead, you'll walk away with the foundations you need to feel confident in creating your own formulas, even if you have no coding background. If this sounds like something you need to take your Notion workspace to the next level, I will leave a link below in the description box for you so you can learn more and register. Okay, so now that we have the first half of our progress bar complete, I'm just going to go ahead and add a plus sign here, and we're going to work on the second half of our progress bar. Now, this line of code is actually going to be incredibly similar to our first line, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy this line and paste it here so we have somewhere to get started. Now, this is going to be a little bit different though. If we go back to our example of having 3 out of 4 of our habits complete, where it would be 75%, or 7.5 when we look at the finished habits divided by total habits and multiply by 10, what we need to do is instead subtract this by 10 so we have the other half of the progress bar. Otherwise, we're going to end up with 7 stars in the front and 7 stars in the back, and since we're working with 10, that doesn't make any sense. So here I'm just going to go ahead and subtract that amount by 10. So technically we had 7.5 up here that we rounded down to 7. Instead, we're going to have 10 minus the 7.5, which is going to end up being 2.5, and we're going to round this up to 3. So instead of using the floor, we're going to use the ceiling function here to do so. So when we're finished, we will have 7 stars in the front and then 3 stars in the back. And the only thing we're going to do differently here as well is change this from a filled in star to a hollow star, so you can easily see that the finished ones are the ones that are filled in and the unfinished ones are still hollowed out. This will all make a little bit more sense when you can see it finished as well. So the next thing I'm going to do is add a space, because we have now done the progress bar itself, but we need to add in the percentage too. So I just want to go ahead and add in a space so they are not like super close and unreadable. The last thing we are going to do is display our progress percentage. Now, because this is showing as a string instead of a number where Notion kind of automatically formatted it for us, we need to do just a little bit of formatting on our own. So I'm going to again use the floor function here to make sure that it is rounding our percentages. And then I'm going to divide our finished habits by our total habits. Go ahead and multiply those by 100 to make sure we get a percentage out of that. And then the last thing I'm going to do is format it, which just is going to turn that from a number into text to match the rest of our formula here. Then I'm going to go ahead and add a percentage sign at the end of this, and then we are done. So now you can see all of our stars show up. So our finished stars are showing as black, and then our unfinished ones are showing as hollowed out. So again, just to go over the example we gave where 3 of our habits were finished and 1 was not, you can now see that we have our 7 filled in stars and 3 that are hollowed out according to our function that we created here. So this is a super fun way to kind of customize your progress bars a little bit. But you can also use emojis if you want to. You do not need to use icons here, so you can make this a little bit more fun and pull in some fun emojis, add some color to your progress bars if you want to. It is totally up to you. Now, before we finish up, I wanted to show you one other option for the progress bars that is a little bit different and I think kind of fun, is using a slider view. So instead of having it show your progress as you're kind of moving along the bar like a traditional progress bar would look like, this slider is going to give you a place in the bar that's kind of showing you where you are. So you have like a circle and then showing you in that bar where you are. It'll look better when I can actually show you what that means instead of me trying to hold up my hand like this. This is actually a really easy thing to add in. All we need to do is go in between the first half and the second half of our progress bar and add in the emoji that's going to be the slider. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and change the substring from X's to be dashes. The Apple symbol that is a horizontal line actually makes a pretty smooth line, so I like to use that one. So instead of having our X's there, we're just putting in 10 line characters. And then once we get those into the first part of our function, we're going to do that in the second part here as well. Now, since we are using the lines instead of stars, we can actually take out this replace all portion. Just delete it and we are good to go. So now when we add in our slider icon, I'm just choosing to add in a little dot symbol here. We'll be able to see where we are on that line in the progress bar. So if I save that and we take a look, we can now see we kind of have a sliding progress bar that changes as we check off our habits. Okay, I have to know which progress bar was your favorite. Creating custom progress bars is always so much fun, but I have to admit I am kind of a sucker for these simple ones that Notion already has built in. If you haven't already, don't forget to grab the formulas that we created today for free in the description box below. And if you loved learning these formulas today and are ready to take your Notion formula knowledge to the next level, be sure to register for my live masterclass happening on May 6th. And don't worry, you will get access to the replay if you can't make it live. In my next video, we're going to be looking at how to add a task from Gmail to Notion for free, so be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss it. Until then, you can learn even more cool things to do with formulas in this video, all about how I built my Notion notification center. I will see you in the next one.